Okay, let's move away from quarterbacks. A big name I'm looking at. Where does Ronnie Stanley end up this season?
I'm so conflicted on this because he
Me
played at
too.
an all-pro level. He, made the Pro Bowl last year. He also took a massive pay cut going into last year because he'd been injured and hadn't played up to the standard that he sets for himself. Understandable. Really nice move on his part. He's also spoken about how, his contributions to the Raiders and his fit with the organization over the long term is important to him. But he's at a point now where he may have priced himself out of the Ravens situation. And the reason is this. His market value is going to be around $20 million. Somebody playing that well, that's still pretty affordable for a left tackle, even at 30 years old. And the Ravens only have $10.5 million in cap. Now, we know the cap is a myth. We know that there are things that you can do to create the space. But I feel like if you're spending and you're that close to getting to the AFC Championship game again or getting to a Super Bowl, do you dedicate the majority of your cap to a left tackle? Now, they've learned in the past how important tackles are and how they can get caught with their pants down if they don't have one. They've cycled a number of different right tackles over the years. When Stanley got hurt, they had to move guys over to the left. 2024 was also the first season in which he played every game in his career. It was also his first with more than 13 games played since 2019. Like, he doesn't consistently stay on the field. I have a hard time investing in that type of guy. We did a tag preview on NFL Daily, and Greg was leaning toward tagging him, and I was like, no, he's 30. He hasn't played consistently, been available, and because one of the greatest abilities is availability. Over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, why would you spend that type of money, tag money on him? So I think that he's going to test the market and maybe they figure something out, but I could see them moving in a different direction. They've had success drafting recently with Tyler Linderbaum at center, Roger Rosengart in the right tackle. Maybe they try to do that again. Maybe they have another plan in mind. I just don't see them spending that much money on a guy who just doesn't stay healthy.
I've gone back and forth too. I still wonder. But man, anyways, no, move on. Next player I want to ask you about, Chris Godwin. Does he stay in Tampa? Because I love their receiver room right now, but man, some of these guys are starting to get older. And like Mike Evans' season last year again was so great, but how many more does he have in them? But what do we do with Chris Godwin if you're the
He is
Bucks?
highly valuable to the Buccaneers because of his connection with Baker Mayfield. When Baker targeted Chris Godwin last year, 80.6 completion percentage, 126.1 passer rating. They're just really good together. But he's coming off of the dislocated ankle that he suffered in that game against the Ravens in the final minute of the game when everybody was all over Todd Bowles for still going for it. I understand. I understand why they did it, and I understand why people were upset. But that causes you to have a little bit of pause because you worry about health. He's also 29. He's due to make pretty significant money, although the recent injury might scare some people away. But production's there. SpotRack had his market value at $22.5 million. The tag is a little bit higher than that at 23.95. They can't tag him. We're past that point now. And what's interesting about the situation is they're really holding out hope that they can work out a deal, demonstrated by the fact that they pushed back the date in which his contract voids in order to buy themselves more time to negotiate with him, and in exchange forfeited their right to tag him. So now they're in the danger zone where it's figure out an extension now or let him go to free agency, and who the hell knows what's going to happen once he goes to free agency.
Who the hell knows is right. Okay, another guy I'm looking at. Let's talk some running backs. The running backs are back. We're back in a running back
We're
era, and
back.
I love that.
We are so back. We are so running back.
We are so running back. Hey, Aaron Jones. It wasn't necessarily his best season, but honestly, I feel like he's still a solid pickup for a lot of teams. Like, I could low-key kind of see Denver.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be in the running back market regardless because they can't run the ball worth a damn. They just haven't. I mean, Javonte Williams is a good player, and he couldn't find any room. Jaleel McLaughlin ended up being their leading back. They had no running game. And surprising that Bo Nix did as well as he did considering that situation. But this one kind of breaks my heart. Because Aaron Jones, first off, is a super nice guy. And secondly, after spending all those years in Green Bay, and there was a lot of consternation over the fact that they weren't using him enough when Mike McCarthy was there, and then LaFleur gets there, and they're still not quite using him enough, and then they start to use him, and he starts to break out, and the next thing you know, he's on the other side of the rivalry, and he's in Minnesota. He's 30. Like, that's the wall, the 30-year-old wall. That's when running backs start to go off of a cliff. He did have a very solid year last year. 255 carries, 1,100 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, chipped another 408 through the passing game, and 2 more receiving touchdowns. He was very good for them last year. He was an upgrade over the often injured Dalvin Cook in previous years, and it really helped balance out that offense. But do you pay a running back who's 30 years old? He made $7 million last year. SpotRack has his market value lower than that, $5.6 million. I think age has a lot to do with that, but they have a lot of cap to work with. $62.85 million in current cap, according to Over the Cap. That's a ton. They could go get him on the cheap and take care of it and not worry about it. The other thing too, that this is why it breaks my heart. I talked with him on Radio Row at the Super Bowl, and he was there for bounty. Can't have your wings without your wingman and bounty paper towels, whatever. Cool jackets. But I asked him about his time in Minnesota because he was on record saying he just loved his fit there. I would hate for a guy to, kind of like Nick Chubb, but with less injury, age out of a place that he had just gotten to and was so
Mhm.
comfortable and happy at. So I hope they work it out. If they get him on the cheap, I think it works out. They have enough cap. They get plenty of cap to spend, even though they might dedicate a lot of that to Darnold. It makes sense for him to stay there. I think that's where he wants to be. That's where he should be. It's just a matter of, can they get over the fact that he's 30 years old, or is this a short-term deal that you just try to go for maximum production immediately?
He is so undeniably likable. I swear, one of my favorite players in
Such
the
a nice
league.
guy. He's such a nice guy.
So the Chargers, they have officially released Joey Bosa. Lots of teams could definitely use a pass rusher. But man, this player has a pretty rich history with injuries. That would worry me if I'm a team going to sign him. Where does Bosa land?
Yeah, him and the injury bug are quite familiar with each other. He's played in 5, 9, and 14 games over the last 3 seasons. He took a pay cut to stay last year with the Chargers, so did Khalil Mack. They bought into the Harbaugh vision. It flopped. It flopped in on Wild Card Weekend when they got beat by the Texans, and you felt as if there was going to be some sort of ramification coming from that. This release is not because of that. It's because he hasn't been healthy, and they were spending a lot of money on him, even with the pay cut, and they just can't simply dedicate that type of money to a guy who isn't available. Again, like Ronnie Stanley, you got to be available. Because he's been missing games, his sack numbers are low. They don't justify the money. 2.5, 6.5, and 5 over the last 3 seasons individually, year by year. That's not good enough. Like, that's the type of production that you can get from a Yaya Diaby in Tampa Bay. That's essentially like he had 7.5, then 4. Kalijah Kancey basically did the opposite. It had 4 and then 7.5 or something like that in the last 2 years. That's replacement level performance. So I'm super curious to see where he goes because he's got to demonstrate that he can be healthy. Him and his brother have both gotten injured a number of times over recent years.
Yes.
But there's also a big market for edge rushers, and everybody loves to pair Khalil Mack with the Packers or the Bears or the Lions or anywhere else. Do they have the same interest in Joey Bosa? It's not going to be as lucrative for him, but he will find a home. It's just a matter of where.
I have heard some chatter today from the Bay Area of what if he goes and he joins his brother and every and I could kind of see that, but honestly, if I'm the Niners, like I'd rather invest in someone like Dre Greenlaw over bringing in Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
I don't know if that necessarily
Yeah,
is
and
where I would
Greenlaw,
go if I would. They have so many unanswered questions, especially with Brock Purdy. I
yeah. They got guys to pay. Talanoa Hufunga's going to free agency. Greenlaw got hurt in the Super Bowl and didn't come back until, the middle of the season. They missed him,
mhm,
and then by the time he came back, they were already so banged up. It's hard to evaluate the Niners in their whole situation because they had so many injuries. That would be
mhm.
like the storybook pairing, much like Chase Young and Nick Bosa are together. And it didn't quite work out like expected, and I don't think this would either. Also, 2 brothers who get hurt a lot. You're going to pay a lot
Yeah.
of money to one of them and a decent amount of money to the other one, and then have neither of them. Like, I'm not saying it's in the Bosa blood or anything, but it is mildly concerning when it comes to constructing a roster, especially when you're figuring out where to dedicate money. So he's not going to get the money that he got in with the Chargers. He just hasn't been available enough. So maybe he comes in the cheap and it works out. But I think that's more of like matchmaking based on personal connections than anything. But I am really interested to see where he goes because I do think he could be gotten at an affordable rate. And if he stays healthy, could be a hell of a bargain, kind of like Dante Fowler was with Washington.
Mm, mhm. Okay, so Nick, for those that don't know, you were in Cleveland. So Myles Garrett, what are we
Mm.
doing with that? Where is it? Because obviously the team would like to keep him, but he wants to be with a contender, and it just feels like he's lost faith in that organization. Where's he?
Okay. He went on a hell of a media tour after he requested his trade.
Yes, he did. I love that
Like,
for him.
I'm in New Orleans. It's early in the week, and he puts the trade request out. And I'm like, okay, I'm not surprised. And then, like, the next day, he's on Rich Eisen. And then the next day, he's on Radio Row. And I'm just like, oh, he's really going out. And I'll tell you this, he has rubbed a lot of people in Cleveland the wrong way, but I'm speaking from the fan perspective. From the Browns'
Okay.
perspective, they are very steadfast in that we are not trading him. And there's a bit of a caveat for now. We're not trading him because everybody has a price. Everybody can be moved if the offer is strong enough. But what I think, or at least I thought they were going to do, is kind of treat it like, obviously not the same type of person or player or anything else, but treat it like the Texans did with Deshaun Watson, which is let the desire for his services build and then
Mm,
line up bidders and then choose from the best one. The Browns will field, they will have people calling them. It's a matter of whether they pick up the phone. If they
mhm.
pick up the phone and get a massive offer they can't turn down, then they'll move them because they'll move anybody. Anybody would move anybody if the offer is that big. I don't know if that big of an offer is going to come. And then we could get to a situation where it's a standoff where they refuse to trade him and he refuses to play, at which point he costs himself money in the form of fines, not getting game checks, that sort of thing. And it gets really ugly. I think that we are going to have this solved maybe by the draft, which would then tell us how the Browns are
Okay.
going to proceed in the draft. But right now, I think we're in line for a prolonged standoff like we've been for, I don't know, the last month.
That franchise has some stuff going on, man.
Mm.
That's the
You know,
nicest
it's
way I
funny.
can put it.
It's funny because everybody was happy in 2023, and as soon as everything went off a cliff,
And then what happened?
largely because of their quarterback and their decisions in
Imagine
that
that.
department, now everybody's unhappy, and their coach gets a grade that's 30th out of 32 head coaches.
Okay, yeah, I wonder why.
Hmm.
Okay, last question for you, Nick. As you mentioned, the franchise tag deadline has come and gone. Only two players were tagged, T. Higgins and Trey Smith. What are your thoughts on that?
Pretty much no brainers. Some people thought that Trey Smith was going to hit the open market. I never did because if you look at the Chiefs and you look at what happened in the Super Bowl, their biggest weakness was their offensive line. They didn't have good tackles. They had to kick Joe Tooney out to tackle to kind of settle the line down. Their next two best offensive linemen are Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. And you simply don't let guys that are young go when they're playing at an elite or near elite level. And I don't care what it takes. They are going to do more cap gymnastics over the next few weeks to really kind of reshape their situation in order to be able to pay some guys. They're not going to keep everybody. But Trey was the guy that you couldn't let leave. So on that tag preview show with Greg, he was like, I think they might let him leave. And I'm like, absolutely not. He cannot leave. Absolutely not. And they didn't let him leave. They made the smart decision and they tagged him. And then T made a ton of sense because the Bengals want him. He wants to be there. Joe Burrow wants him and believes that there's a way to work it out. It does make me
And you
laugh
want
though.
Joe Burrow to be happy.
Of course you do. And you want him to have all the weapons at his disposal,
Yes.
especially if your defense can't stop a nosebleed, which Sam Hubbard just retired. Now Trey Hendrickson's looking at a trade. Yeah, it might get worse over there. Yikes, you need those weapons. Team made a lot of sense. I think that they actually try to work out a long-term deal, and this is the way to preserve team control in order to make that happen. Unlike last year, I don't know if he ends up signing the tag. They have a lot of time now to work out a deal. I think they get one done. But both were no-brainers, at least in my opinion, and I'm glad both got done.
Maybe the Bengals can just win 55-47 every week if Trey
Well, I
Henderson is still.
mean,
I
you
mean, they've
know,
got
there.
the offense.
I know that it still exists in some circles, though poorly funded. Maybe it turns into arena football.
Nick Shook, thank you so much for joining us. You can see his work at NFL.com. You can listen to him on the NFL Daily with Greg Rosenthal and the Gridiron Podcast with Sean Barry and yours truly. Thanks for
Yes,
joining us.
fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.